Good morning. Where's your black awkward boot? So I am pleased to be here, to be standing, to be with you again. I've had a lot of time to sit with my feet up and to contemplate, and this particular topic today of from the new design for living from Ernest Holmes, this idea of discovering yourself I found to be such a lovely, magical topic. And so often, through many times I've gone to Asilomar and to ministerial conferences, and many times of being in this teaching, I have heard again and again what a unique expression of God we are, what an individualized expression we are. And I almost kind of take that like, I'm starting to look at it like a bumper sticker, and I'm not really taking it in. I'm not really taking it in how powerful that concept is. And so my intention today, my heart with you today is that we look deeper into that, and that you walk out of here with some tools, with some ideas, with some opportunities for yourself to suddenly be on fire with that unique and individualized expression of yourself, and how powerful your thoughts are to create that knowing inside of you. And I find this grace of this teaching to be so heartwarming. I knew for a couple of weeks that George Rogers was going to be performing for the 10:30 service, and I kept thinking, wouldn't it be lovely if the 9 o'clock people could hear him? And then I walk in today, and there's a little change. He's going to sing Morning Has Broken. And as soon as I hear George's voice that always comes totally from his heart, totally, if you watch him perform, and I do invite you, you can even walk out on my talk at 10:30 if you just want to hear some more of George Rogers and his heart as he performs some wonderful selections. I happen to be privileged to know just what those are. But this idea of discovering yourself. I ask you, do you know yourself? The meditation was an inquiry in the opportunity for you to play with that a little bit. And as I was preparing for the message today, I was witness to a TED Talk by Amy Purdy, P-U-R-D-Y. Had anybody seen that particular TED Talk? Isn't that wonderful? Very inspiring. And she starts off her story. She's a very elegant young woman, and she's walking back and forth across the stage, and so freely sharing her path, her story. And she starts it off with the idea of if you could write your story, how would you like it to go? Her words were more eloquent than that, but that idea of you being the author of your experience. How do you want your story to come out? And I add to that, are you willing to turn the pages of your story? So often we get hung up and we keep rereading. Oh, let's see, where was I? Oh, I just read that page, but I don't remember what I just read. And you're doing that same thing with your life. I just lived this experience, and here I've got it again. I wasn't paying attention. And so here's my life experience again. But I want to share just briefly, if you can look to TED Talks and find Amy Purdy on there, you want to witness visually her grace and her beauty as she tells her story. But she says, if your life was a book, and how would you like your story to go? And so she starts explaining that she lived in a hot place, and she dreamed. She started visualizing her life as being in a cooler climate, and she loved the snow sports. And so she started dreaming of herself as being a professional snowboarder, and this dream started to be made manifest. You see, when you really invest yourself and in your thoughts and your heart into the idea of your future in such a way, this is where the tool of visioning and the tool of meditation and affirmation and clear thinking and directing those thoughts with that higher good unfolding, where you allow that idea of centering yourself in that place. We are the human expression of that divine idea centered, that divine consciousness is expressed, individualized in all of us and forever pouring through each and every one of us. So we're all one in tapping into that divine conduit, and yet we have this opportunity to be a deep and pure expression of that truth, to be a vehicle, an instrument of that truth. So she started playing out her life in this way, and it was all working for her until one day she went home sick. The next day she woke up in the hospital with bacterial meningitis, and she even mentions that is a preventable vaccine type of ailment to come into her being. But there she was, and she proceeded to go into coma and to get very, very sick, months into the hospital. What happened to her? She lost her spleen, she lost the hearing in her left ear, she lost her kidneys. She lost both of her legs below the knee. She wakes up to that. Okay, so there you are with a young, she's young, she was in her like 19, I'll say, I'm not sure exact age, but it was young like that. And then you wake up with no legs. And she said, shows a picture of her being wheeled out of the hospital, and she felt like she was just pieced together, and she's just kind of zoned out with her family all supporting her as she realizes she has this new vehicle to express this divine. And was it easy for her? Did she find it right away? No. She felt emotionally and physically and mentally fragmented and fragile, wounded to the core. Her dreams gone. And so it came to the point where she realized that she would have the opportunity to walk with artificial limbs. And she said it was so hard for her. She thought the worst was over until she saw those limbs, and they were two big, thick trunks of wood with a metal ankle and a stiff foot, no, a rubbery foot, and she described it even with a fake vein down the foot. She said it just made her stomach sick. And then she got on them, and they were painful and they hurt, and she could hardly move. And so for many months after that, she showed a picture of herself just being depressed. Just showed herself in bed with these two stumps by her bed. She said, this was my life. And then she had the stirring. You see, we all have that stirring. We all have that stirring to say, you know, this is no more. I'm no more the victim of my past. I am going to use that as wisdom. I'm going to use my past as grace and understanding and my own personal spiritual wisdom. Not doctrines that have been fed to me that's saying that I could, if you just followed all of these rituals, you will be a spiritual being. No, you find that unique expression in those moments, in those darkest moments. She discovered an idea, and she just started to manifest that idea through her thinking, through her dreaming, a bigger dream about herself. And so she decided that she wanted to snowboard again. And so the first time when she was out with her new legs upon the mountain, she tells the story so sweetly that even to her horror, she fell, and it shocked everybody because she was laying on the ground and her snowboard took off with her legs down the hill. And she said it horrified her and it horrified everybody else. But it was a deciding moment. Now, sometimes those moments where we're trying to redesign ourselves, to recreate ourselves, to rediscover ourselves, we will find something that we could just totally block us and say, never mind, it was so much more comfortable in bed with my feet safely beside me, not even attached. She could have gone there. But no, she took that opportunity to design her own legs. And she is so cute how she describes that she could be any height she wanted. See how clever this is? She could paint her toenails any color she wanted. She could have any size foot she wanted, so she could buy all the perfect shoes on the sale rack. And so she started looking with great amusement at all the opportunities that her new legs would give her. And so, not to go on and on about Amy Purdy's story, but I find it so phenomenal. Ultimately, do you know that this past year or so, she won the world gold record for snowboarding? Don't you think that's phenomenal? It's phenomenal. And what can we do? Don't we live in a small place when maybe we don't. Maybe you're all living that big inside of yourself. But I have watched my own self wanting to redesign, wanting to liberate myself from an image I've held of who I am for a very, very long time. And that's not easy. It's not easy to pull apart something that you create for yourself, some idea of yourself. And so for me personally, my own personal story is when I was 18, a totally insecure person. You know, I would live this certain part of myself out into my world, but inside, I would just want to go home and suck my 2 fingers, which I did when I was a little kid, because I was just like, I was afraid of the world, afraid of who I was, afraid of what everybody kept telling me, that I had this potential, but I couldn't find it, I couldn't feel it, and yet I kept being witness to other people's idea of me, but I didn't have it. And so I started taking yoga at that time, and an idea was birthed inside of me. And so for the rest of my life, because of that connection to yoga, I lived yoga. And the yoga is my whole heart and my whole being. And then several years ago, I started recognizing that perhaps I have now been wearing that yoga garment, and who am I without that? Who am I without that idea of me? And I thought I must strip that apart to find out who I am. And so every time I would come in, I taught here for many years, every time I'd come into the class and I would say, I'm going to tell the class today, I'm going to tell them today I need to find out who I am. I need to go away for a while. And for anybody else, I don't know if you've done this kind of soul searching for yourself, and when you try to step into it, it's not as easy. And then somebody in that class somebody would say, oh, I'm so glad you're here because I knew you'd be here. You're always here. And I'd think, I might not be. Someday I need to find out who I am without showing up in that embodiment of a yoga teacher that's always here. And so when it came to this next foot surgery, I said, you know, this is the time. This is the time to separate myself from an idea, an image, and to truly discover the deep yogi inside of me. The one that goes deep into retreat, the one that turns into the cave, into the lonely silence, into that place where I deeply, deeply listen to my own heart and the words that I've shared so often. I need my words to be my words. And so very carefully, very painfully, very emotionally, I let my yoga class go. And you can all be sitting there thinking, oh, it's so big deal. Big deal. It was like my whole heart I put out there. And some of the reaction was, no problems. We'll figure out something else to do. Other people shared good wishes to me, well-being. Other people said, oh, yeah, well, when are you coming back? So all these different beautiful ways to look at an idea of stripping myself, and I still don't know. So I spent I remember being on the operating table and feeling really free, because this was the moment I was going to redesign myself. Of course, I had anesthesia on board, but I thought, here it goes. This is my moment of transformation. And I woke up and I was in pain, and I didn't like what was going on. I couldn't, you kind of can't come out of anesthesia. And I thought, wait, I'm supposed to be really enlightened. And yet I felt really crummy. But then I kept coming home, all this stuff going on, but I felt this deep peace. So I'm inviting you into recognizing the opportunities for you. to rediscover, to not take on yourself bound by precedent, bound by who you have been, bound by who people expect you to be, because we are forever new. We are forever having an opportunity to sparkle with a divine recognition of ourselves, infused with the Spirit that is so pleasurable to discover. And so these days of sitting quietly in my home, I am discovering pieces of myself and discovering and seeing other people with greater clarity, with less judgment that I was finding myself putting upon because I wasn't happy with my own life, the way it was going. So enough of that story, because it's a story that hasn't really unfolded yet, but I have the opportunity, thanks to the inspiration of Amy Purdy, to rewrite my story. How do I want it to look? Must it look as it always has been? Must it be as it always has been? Must the people I meet always be who I thought they were a moment ago? Anthony DeMello, I always love to share his little pearls of wisdom, and he speaks this about liberation. The student comes to the master, "How shall I get liberation?" "Find out who has bound you," said the master. So the disciple returned after a week and said, "No one has bound me." "Then why ask to be liberated?" That was the moment of enlightenment for the disciple who suddenly became free. Find out what has bound you. And when you really take your storyline into what has really bound you and you realize, there is nothing. I truly am fresh in this moment, liberated to an enlightened understanding of that God source that dwells within me as me. You see, Ernest Holmes in this design for living, this new design for living, reminds us there is no middleman. We are the point where heaven and earth meet. Heaven and earth meet, and we have this sense of connection, of this divine knowing, this grace-filled opportunity to express that truth. Ernest Holmes says, "At all times, we are freely creating the life that we live. The ability consciously and specifically to better our lives depends on the degrees to which we are able to believe in our basic concept of the nature of life with faith. A faith that rests on both intellectual and emotional conviction. A faith that rests on emotional, so you must feel it in your heart. You must feel it in your heart. And an intellectual, you must know it with the mind, the clarity and the tool of the mind. So you take this self-givingness of the heart, this pure love, this pure grace, and you take this unconditional law that is always unfolding. What is that law? It is done unto you as you believe. Oh my gosh, well, what do I believe? She's asking me to re-script my story. Do I believe in that? Is my story simply a fairy tale of good wishes? Perhaps so, but it can be done. It is done unto you as you believe. So you see, you do not drag the past as a resource that you must use those tools that they have to be an expression of who you are as you think of yourself in the future of an idea of who you are. So you quietly sit in your meditation, in your practice, and you ask that divine question. What is God's idea of itself expressing as me now? And then you don't try to just suddenly, okay, I want this, that, and trying to force God into an idea, but you wait for a minute and you allow that idea of the soul voice, that still small voice inside of you, to percolate through you a greater truth, a greater understanding. And then you watch the dialogue of your mind that will start to penetrate and pierce some of that vision, perhaps with doubt, perhaps with judgments of yourself from the past. And those are critical moments. This is why it's so important when every spiritual path keeps telling you, turn to the present moment. Relieve yourself of the past. Visualize with heart and intention and divine idea of yourself in the future, but pay attention to the distractions of the mind in the moment, because they will outplay in the future demonstrations. So you could say right now, up until now my life has been filled with, and you fill in the blank. Has it been filled with prosperity? And some of you might stop at the idea of money. And I want you to recognize that even money is just an expression of divine. And so this idea of prosperity is with friendships, with foods, with so many ideas of the abundance of nature itself. We are surrounded by this good. And so we recognize, oh my gosh, I've had the idea that I've had less than. Got all this to put into my story, to see my story unfold and to be made manifest in a greater understanding and truth of who I am as a divine conduit of that one individualized expression, that spark that God has bestowed in me, as me, to you. The powerful, these are other words of Ernest Holmes. The powerful emotions, the two powerful emotions are love and hate. And we need to look into ourselves and try to discover evidence where our actions have been flavored or colored by any degree of hate or dislike, or colored with the idea of great love and permeate a greater truth through eyes of love. Because the laws of the mind are the basic reality of our universe. It is done unto us as we believe. It is done unto us as we believe, and we are infused, and we live a life of grace and heart and love. And he reminds us that the thought of hate can be as damaging to our vision, to our truth, to our life, as just slamming a hammer down upon our thumb. That hate can stop everything. And so we need to turn to those moments when we're distracted and not leave the situation in judgment or in hate or in dislike or in distaste, but turn to that and recognize, I have just dwelt many moments of my mind in displeasure of my friend, and I have picked them apart. I have picked what they are doing apart, and I have invoked more distaste, dislike, or hate, any form of that. I've just allowed more of that to be drawn into my future. I want to heal that right here, right now. And so you take that pause, you take that moment where you were distracted with your into, I lift this up, and know that this too is transformed in that self-givingness, in that purity of love. I had the absolute pleasure of watching the grandbaby, Madison, of Chris Johnson and Diana Bordeaux. They brought the baby in the other day, and I was watching that innocence, because as I was preparing for this talk, there's this idea of discovering yourself, and they were feeding this sweet little baby the bottle, and we were talking, but I was so distracted by this baby because its legs were going over here and over, and I guess because of my yoga background, I'd be like, wow, would you look at that flexibility? And I was thinking of that pure nature, and she just kept drinking that bottle, but flapping that leg way out. And then I'd start to, is her hip okay? And started to do my nursing thing on this poor little baby. And it was just this free spirit. But then this baby, she was so exploring her body. Diana said that she can even flop over and suck her own toe, and she can do that for a while. And I'm going, amazing little yogi there. But then she did something that was very curious to me, because remember I told you I sucked these two fingers. You know how when you're little babies, you do these things that bring you security. So I have to find myself, and so you suck something. And thumbs, fingers, palms, somebody else's ear, I don't know, but I did these two fingers. This baby took the hand, flipped it back this way, and stuck it in. And I thought, awkward. I wanted to tell her how to do it this way. That would be, follow a finger guru's sucking person's advice and turn it this way. You'll be so much more comfortable in life. But again and again, she just do that? And so I know, in the private, in your home, you're going to go home and try it, because I went home and tried it. I thought, it was not pleasurable to me. But the innocence, a design, this discovery of ourself in a whole new way. We have this direct access to the divine. We want to remember, if nothing else, when we leave here today, there is this fine point of divine consciousness within us. You can enter any faith path, you can go into any philosophy, any one you choose. In all of that, this is where that common knowing of the oneness, this truth, you have access to that spirit of the divine. And it is all surrounded by this impersonal law. What is that law again? It is done unto you as you believe. So it doesn't, when you start to have a thought, it's not going to tell you, no, you don't want to go there. This is what's going to happen. It's not, it's just going to do unto you as you believe. So it's for your heart and your mind to be absolutely clear on the direction you want this impersonal law to make that connection, because the Spirit dwells within you and it is following the act of thought. And this is such a powerful, powerful understanding when you don't just hear it by saying, thought will create my experience. No, it is so proved by science now, this idea of the divine thought. It is so potent with love and possibility, so filled with possibilities for peace and truth and changing the world. So you want to be the person in your thoughts. You want to conduct a personal tour. Ernest Holmes invites us to do that personal tour. Invest yourself in those moments of contemplation. Who am I? What comes up for you? Who do I want to be? How do I want this script to end? And so recognize those moments where you are acting in love and where it's, I simply like to look at it like a little Tourette syndrome where I just have to, did you see what they did? They did. I got it out of me. And I'll kind of spew some piece of my judgment. And I think I'm holier than thou when I'm doing that. And I need to pull that back. And for me personally, shame on me. Shame on me, I know a greater truth. And sometimes we just want to Tourette it out there and get it out. But it's still out there. What do we do with it? We turn it around and we acknowledge the distraction of our thought from a greater good, ourself, and what we've planted the seed on another soul out there. We don't want to leave anybody with that distasteful thought. So sometimes we have this stuff churn up inside of us. And we just take this divine opportunity to change our thought and not leave it unattended so it does not create harm for anyone. And most importantly, it does not harm ourselves. So in closing, I want to share the meditation that Ernest Holmes gives us in this final passage of discovering yourself. So close your eyes and really feel this percolate down. Each one of you has had an opportunity today to drop the armor, to drop the story, to turn the page. Many ways it is spoken. In using our thought, the function of our minds, we need always to remember that it is not our mind that we use. Rather, it's an individualization within us of the one mind that we use at the level of our awareness of it. We are never alone. We are not isolated fragments of creation, but we are part of one great whole. We may always turn to the greater whole and accept more and more of its good, abundance, and right action of which we may have unknowingly been depriving ourselves. We attract to ourselves experiences corresponding to the nature of our thought. So join with me in this knowing, according to the nature of our thought. And today, in this holy moment, our thoughts rest in the divine. Our thoughts rest in love. And from this place of pure possibility and potential, of pure love and opportunity, we vision a greater good unfolding right here, right now, in our lives, in the lives of our family and friends, in the lives of our community, in the lives of the world, in the lives of all sentient beings. We have this opportunity to forgive, to let go, to put down. So in this expression of discovering ourselves, we are reminded once again of this divine spark, held in love, held in truth, held in power, forever unfolding. So thank you, God, this day for changing my thoughts, and now I know my world is changing. Effortlessly, with grace, with ease, with gratitude, I release this, simply allowing this greater good to unfold right here, right now. In gratitude and with grace, with love, I simply let it be so. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you.